My mother told my daughter she wasn't welcome at Christmas for being different. So, the person who paid for my mother's health insurance, me, quietly canceled the plan. 2 weeks later, my phone showed 41 missed calls. This is a story about the quiet power shift in a modern family, where the person writing the checks finally decides to cash in on a different kind of currency. Consequences. For years, I was the reliable daughter, the one who handled the practical things, like the $7,000 annual premium for my mother's health plan. But what do you owe a parent who tells your child they don't belong? To understand why 41 missed calls would land in my phone, you have to understand the family economy I was raised in. I was the practical daughter. My brother was the favorite. It was never a secret. When he wanted a new guitar, it appeared by the weekend. When I needed help with a science fair project, the answer was, "You're so resourceful, you'll figure it out." They called it independence. It felt like a test I hadn't signed up for. This dynamic calcified into our adult roles. My brother's life was for celebrating, his promotions, his vacations, his engagement. My life was for managing things. When our father passed, I handled the paperwork. When the roof leaked, I found the contractor. And when my mother, at 68, could no longer afford her Medicare supplement plan, I added her to my employer's policy. $7,242 a year pulled quietly from my account. No fanfare. It was just what the practical daughter did. The unspoken contract was simple. My financial support bought peace. It bought me the right to have a life she didn't fully approve of, a life that eventually included my daughter, Lily. Lily is artistic, perceptive, and from the moment she could talk, she was unequivocally herself. For me, that was everything. For my mother, it became a source of quiet tension. Lily didn't fit into the neat, traditional boxes my mother cherished. She preferred graphic novels to princess stories, chose comfortable clothes over dresses, and at 13, she confided in me that she liked girls. We didn't make a grand announcement. It was just part of who she was, woven into our daily lives, but my mother noticed. Comments started, disguised as concern. "Are you sure she's not just confused?" she'd ask over the phone. "She dresses so, plainly. The other girls at church, their granddaughters, they're so lovely." Each remark was a small paper cut, a tiny rejection of Lily's essence. I defended her every time, but I also paid the insurance premium. I told myself I was buying tolerance, that my financial responsibility would, eventually, soften my mother's heart. I was funding a hope that she would see my child for the wonderful person she is. The cracks became chasms last Thanksgiving. Lily wore a collared shirt and trousers to dinner. My mother didn't speak to her directly all night. Afterward, as I was loading dishes, my mother cornered me in the kitchen. Her voice was low, sharp. "You're encouraging this phase. She's becoming an outsider. People will talk. What will I tell my friends at Bridge Club?" I felt something cold solidify in my chest. "She's not a phase," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "She's your granddaughter, and if your friends have a problem, that's theirs." She just shook her head, a gesture of profound disappointment that was meant for both of us. Then came the Christmas invitation, or rather the non-invitation. An email thread with my brother CC'd to me detailing the menu, the schedule, the gift exchange. My brother wrote, "Can't wait to see the kids." My mother's reply all, "We'll have your 3, of course, such angels for Lily." Perhaps it's best she sits this one out. She's so different from the other children. It creates an awkwardness. She'd be more comfortable at home, I'm sure. I read those lines on my lunch break, sitting in my car. The world outside the windshield blurred. It wasn't an argument, not a scream. It was a calm, administrative erasure. My daughter was being edited out of the family portrait for convenience, for comfort, for the sake of not being awkward. I didn't cry. I didn't call to scream. A terrifying clarity settled over me. For decades, I had operated within their system, the practical daughter managing logistics, smoothing over conflicts, subsidizing the very family structure that now deemed my child unacceptable. I had been pouring water into a cup with a hole in the bottom, hoping the leak would fix itself. The insurance payment was due in 9 days, a recurring calendar notification I'd seen 100 times. This time, I looked at it and saw not a duty, but a lever. It was the only form of power I had in this dynamic. My love, my reasoning, my appeals to basic decency, they were worthless currency in her world. But $7,000, That was a language she understood. I drove home that night, kissed Lily on the head as she did homework, and logged into the benefits portal. The process to remove a dependent was simple. A few clicks, a drop-down menu, a confirmation box. Are you sure you want to cancel this coverage? This action cannot be undone. My finger hovered over the trackpad. This was the cliff's edge. Once I did this, there was no going back. I wasn't just canceling an insurance plan. I was canceling a lifetime of conditioning, of accepting crumbs and calling it loyalty. I was declaring that my daughter's dignity was more valuable than my mother's comfort. I clicked confirm. The screen refreshed. A green checkmark appeared. Change processed successfully. Coverage termination effective end of current billing period. There was no explosion, no dramatic music, just the quiet hum of my laptop and the distant sound of Lily laughing at a video in the other room. I closed the computer. The deed was done. The first silent nuke had been launched. And I had absolutely no idea what would happen when it landed. For the first week, nothing happened. The silence was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. I went through my days mechanically, jumping every time my phone buzzed, expecting the explosion. It didn't come. Part of me wondered if I'd overestimated the importance of what I'd done. Maybe she had other coverage I didn't know about. Maybe she wouldn't even notice until she needed it. But I had no idea how loud silence could be. The first sign wasn't a phone call. It was a text from my brother sent to our group chat with our mother. It read, "Mom's pharmacy says her insurance is rejecting her heart medication. She's freaking out. Do you know anything about this?" My blood turned to ice water. Her heart medication. I'd known about it, of course. I'd helped her navigate the prior authorization process 2 years ago. It was a name-brand drug, costing over $1,000 a month without coverage. I stared at my brother's text. This was the moment. The first ripple from the stone I'd thrown into the family pond. I took a deep breath and typed back, my fingers steady. Her coverage through my employer was terminated. She should contact Medicare about her options. I hit send. The 3 little dots appeared immediately. Then my phone rang. It was my brother. I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. On the 4th ring, I answered, my voice calm. "Hello." "What the hell does terminated mean?" he shouted, dispensing with any greeting. "She got a letter saying she was removed from the plan. What did you do?" "Exactly what the letter says," I replied, my tone even. "I removed her from my insurance plan." There was a sputtering silence on the other end. I could hear our mother wailing in the background. "Why would you do that? Do you have any idea what this means? She can't afford that pill. Are you trying to kill her?" His words were meant to wound, to guilt me back into my place. But they landed on the new, solid ground I was standing on. "I'm not trying to kill anyone," I said, each word deliberate. "I am ensuring my daughter is not killed piece by rejection. Mom told Lily she wasn't welcome at Christmas because she's different. She excluded her own granddaughter. So I've excluded her from the financial support she takes for granted. It's a consequence, not an attack." The line was so quiet I thought he'd hung up. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, confused. That's about Christmas. You're doing this over a stupid holiday argument. You're being hysterical. Just fix the insurance and we'll talk about Lily later." And there it was, the core of the family logic. My daughter humanity was a stupid holiday argument. My mother's comfort was a non-negotiable necessity. My brother couldn't even connect the two things as being of equal weight. To him, they existed on different planets. "There's nothing to fix," I said. "And there's nothing to talk about. The decision about Lily was the decision. My response is also a decision. They're connected. She's learning that now." I ended the call. My hands were trembling, but my resolve was. This was the first firewall, and I'd held it. The next day, the calls from my mother started. Not the frantic, angry calls I'd braced for, but confused, wheedling ones. The first voicemail was a masterpiece of passive aggression. "Honey, it's Mom. I'm at the pharmacy and there's some silly mix-up with my pills. They say my insurance is wrong. Can you call them and straighten it out? You're so good at these things." As if it were a minor clerical error, a task for the practical daughter. I deleted it. The second call came 2 hours later. Her voice was tighter. I called the insurance company myself. They said the primary subscriber removed me. That's you. Did you make a mistake on the website? I know those portals can be tricky. She was giving me an out, a face-saving way to back down, to pretend it was all a technical glitch. I did not call back. The silence from me was a new language she didn't understand. For my entire life, my role had been to respond, to fix, to manage. My quiet was more terrifying to her than any scream. It meant I was operating on a set of rules she hadn't written. By day 5, the tone shifted. The third voicemail was pure, undiluted panic. The pharmacist says it will be $1,200. I don't have that. What am I supposed to do? You have to call them. You have to fix this. The fear in her voice was real. It clawed at the oldest, most conditioned parts of me. The little girl who was supposed to make things better. I almost picked up the phone. Almost. Then I walked into the living room where Lily was painting, her brow furrowed in concentration, creating a vibrant, chaotic world on her canvas. She was so fully, unapologetically herself. I thought of the email. She's so different, it creates an awkwardness. I went back to my desk and let the fear on the recording hang in the air, unanswered. This was the cruel math I was learning. Her momentary panic versus my daughter's lifelong sense of belonging. I was forcing the account to balance. My brother became the intermediary, a role he hated. He wasn't the practical one, he was the golden child, unused to handling crises. His texts turned from accusatory to pleading. She's not sleeping. She says her chest feels tight. This is getting out of hand. Just reinstate it and we can have a family meeting. A family meeting, where my mother would cry, my brother would lecture, and I would be pressured into accepting a vague, insincere apology while everything went back to the way it was. Where my leverage would be gone, and Lily would be expected to sit through future holidays as the tolerated outsider. My reply was always the same. The condition for any discussion is a full, specific, and public apology to Lily for excluding her, and a guarantee of her unconditional welcome at all family events. Until then, the situation is unchanged. Radio silence. The apology did not come. Instead, the strategy changed. I received an email from my mother's personal address, formal and cold. It was copied to my brother and, oddly, to an email address I didn't recognize. It stated that my unilateral and malicious termination of vital healthcare coverage constituted elder abuse and financial exploitation. She claimed she was exploring her legal options, citing filial responsibility laws. She had done her research. The email ended with a sentence designed to terrify. I have contacted an attorney. My hands went numb holding my phone. Elder abuse. The phrase was a sledgehammer. It summoned images of police, of courtrooms, of a permanent stain on my name. This was the nuclear option in her playbook, to reframe my stand for my daughter as a criminal act. For 24 hours, I was paralyzed. Had I gone too far? Was this actually monstrous? I spent a night in the black hole of the internet, reading about filial support laws, about legal definitions of financial abuse. The lines were blurry, but the threat was real. In over half the country, adult children can be held legally responsible for parents' necessities. Was insurance a necessity? A court might say yes. This was the pivot, the moment the conflict left the emotional realm and entered the legal one. The stakes were no longer just about hurt feelings or Christmas dinners. They were about my freedom, my record, my future. I was sitting in my dark living room at 3 a.m, legal websites glowing on my screen when Lily padded out. She saw my face lit by the blue light. "Mom," she asked, her voice soft with sleep. "What's wrong?" I wanted to hide it all, to tell her everything was fine, but she was 13, not a baby. She'd been excluded. She deserved to know the war her existence had sparked. So I told her. About the insurance, the emails, the legal threat. Her face in the dim light was solemn. "She's trying to scare you," Lily said, her young voice surprisingly clear. "Because you're not scared of her being mad anymore, so she has to find a bigger scare." Out of the mouths of babes, my daughter, the one deemed too different to understand family dynamics, had just cut to the heart of it. This was an escalation in a battle of wills, a move to regain control by invoking the ultimate authority, the law. Her simple analysis broke the spell of my panic. Fear was the point. It was the tool. I couldn't let it work. The next morning, I did something I should have done from the start. I called a lawyer. A 30-minute consultation cost $250. I laid out the facts. I had voluntarily paid for my mother's supplemental insurance for years. I had canceled it. She was not destitute. She had Social Security and Medicare. She was claiming this was financial abuse. The lawyer, a woman with a dry, no-nonsense voice, listened. "Voluntary support is just that, voluntary," she said. "Unless there's a court order or a contract, you can generally stop. Filial responsibility laws are rarely enforced for something like this, especially if she has other means. The elder abuse claim is a serious allegation, but based on what you've told me, it sounds like a pressure tactic. She'd have to prove you intended to deprive her of necessities to harm her. A one-time cancellation after a family dispute. A judge would likely see it as a civil family matter, not criminal." The relief was so profound it felt like weakness. I hadn't broken the law. I was standing on solid, if controversial, ground. "What should I do?" I asked. "Document everything," she advised. "Every call, every text, every email, especially the one where she excluded your daughter. That's your motivation. It doesn't make it legally airtight, but it provides context. If she actually sues you for support, that context matters. And do not engage. Any communication should be through me if it continues down this path." I thanked her and hung up. The cost of the call was the best money I'd ever spent. The monster in the shadows had a name, and it wasn't as big as I'd feared. I followed her advice. I saved the different email. I screenshot my brother's texts. I saved the voicemails. I created a timeline in a document. I was no longer just a hurt daughter. I was building a case. And then the landscape shifted again. The strange email address copied on my mother's legal threat email. It belonged to my Aunt Deborah, my father's sister, a woman I hadn't spoken to in years. She called me 2 days later. "Your mother is on my phone every hour," Aunt Deborah said, her voice weary. "She's saying you've stolen from her, that you're trying to make her sick. She's rallying the family troops. But I saw the email she sent you about your girl." My heart stopped. "You did." She forwarded it to me, proud of herself, saying she'd finally put her foot down about the weirdness. Aunt Deborah sighed, a long, tired sound. "I love my sister-in-law, but she's wrong. What she said about your child is cruel. I'm not calling to take sides. I'm calling to tell you the field you're playing on. She's not going to apologize. In her mind, she's the victim. You removing the insurance proved her right, that you're cruel and unpredictable. She's telling everyone you're punishing her for having standards." Hearing it laid out so clinically was devastating. There was no path to reconciliation here. In her story, she was the righteous grandmother, and I was the villainous daughter. My leverage had failed to produce the result I wanted. Instead, it had hardened her position and expanded the battlefield to include the entire extended family. "What do I do?" I whispered, the exhaustion finally seeping into my voice. "You decide what's more important," Aunt Deborah said gently. "Being right or being at peace, you might not get both, and for what it's worth, protecting your kid is always right." She hung up. Her words swirled in my head, being right or being at peace. I had wanted to be both. I had wanted the consequence to be so shocking it would force a change of heart, but it had only forced a doubling down. The 2-week mark approached. The initial flurry of calls had slowed to a trickle of ominous silence. I started to think the storm had passed, that we had reached a cold, permanent stalemate. I was wrong. It was a Tuesday evening, exactly 14 days after I'd clicked the confirmation button. I was making dinner when my phone, charging on the counter, lit up. Then it lit up again, and again. The screen flashed with my mother's name over and over in rapid succession, not calling long enough to go to voicemail, just ringing, stopping, and ringing again. A digital barrage. I stood frozen, a wooden spoon in my hand. The calls kept coming, one after another after another. The silent standoff was over. This was the detonation. Lily looked from the screaming phone to my face. "Is that Grandma?" she asked. I could only nod. The phone finally went still. I walked over, my legs feeling like wood. The screen showed the notification, 41 missed calls. The cliffhanger wasn't the action anymore. It was the aftermath. The silent nuke had landed, and now I had to face the fallout. I didn't call back. The 41st call had been the last. The silence that followed was heavier, charged, like the air before a lightning strike. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, finished dinner with Lily, and tried to pretend the world wasn't cracking open outside our door. But the detonation had happened. The fallout was just beginning to drift down. It landed first in the form of a police officer. A knock at the door at 10:30 that night. Not the frantic pounding of my mother, but an official, firm rap. Through the peephole, I saw the dark blue uniform. My stomach dropped through the floor. She had done it. She had called the police and claimed elder abuse. I opened the door, my heart a frantic bird in my chest. The officer, a man in his 40s with a tired but alert face, asked if I was me. I confirmed, my voice thin. He explained they'd received a call from an elderly woman, my mother, expressing concern for her welfare. She claimed her daughter, me, had cut off her access to critical medication and was refusing contact. It was a wellness check for her. "Is your mother in some kind of danger?" he asked, his eyes scanning my face, the calm of my home behind me. The question was so absurd it almost broke my panic. "No," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "She is not in danger. She is upset because I stopped paying for her optional health insurance after she excluded my teenage daughter from our family Christmas for being different. She has Medicare. She has resources. She is using you to intimidate me." I saw the shift in his eyes. A domestic dispute, not a crime scene. He asked for her address, which I gave. He asked if I thought she was a harm to herself or others. I said no, just to me and my child. He nodded, made a note. "These family situations," he said, trailing off, "they can get messy. My advice, keep your door locked and document everything. If she shows up here causing a disturbance, you can call us." He left. I closed the door, locked it, and slid down to the floor, my back against the wood. She had weaponized the police. This was no longer a private war. She had brought in the cavalry, dressed in blue. The message was clear. She would escalate to any authority to force me back into line. The next morning, the battlefield expanded to social media. I woke to a string of concerned messages from cousins, old family friends. "Is everything okay with your mom?" She posted something really vague but worrying. I opened the app I rarely used. There it was on her profile, set to public. A black and white photo of her hands, looking frail. The caption read, "When you realize some people's hearts grow cold, praying for clarity and healing. So hard when family turns their back in your time of need. Heartbroken family struggles, God sees the truth." The comments were a chorus of support. "Praying for you, dear. Whoever did this will get their karma. Family should be everything." She was crafting the narrative perfectly. The victimized grandmother, betrayed by a cruel child. She was recruiting an army of public opinion, and they were enlisting without hearing a word of my side. I felt a hot rush of shame, then a colder surge of fury. This was the ultimate manipulation. She was painting my defense of Lily as a petty, heartless act. I wanted to scream into the comments, to post the different email for all to see. But I didn't. The lawyer's advice echoed in my head. Do not engage. But the pressure was mounting. My brother called again. This time he wasn't pleading. He was resigned. "She's at my house," he said flatly. "She showed up with a suitcase, says she's too stressed to be alone. My wife is furious. You need to fix this." "I didn't invite her to your house," I replied, though a part of me cringed for his wife. "And I can't fix what she broke." "She's your mother," he exploded. "She's 70 years old. She's talking about lawyers and police and posting crazy stuff online. This is a nightmare. Just call her. Apologize, reinstate the insurance. We can figure out the Lily stuff later." Figure out the Lily stuff later. Always later. My daughter's place in the family was perpetually negotiable, a problem to be solved after everyone else's comfort was secured. My mother's tantrum, her legal threats, her social media campaign, they were all treated as urgent crises. Lily's exclusion was a footnote. "No," I said, the word final. "The sequence is non-negotiable. Apology to Lily first. Then, and only then, will I consider any discussion about anything else." I heard him mutter a curse before hanging up. The line was drawn, and he had chosen his side. the side of quiet, of restoring the old equilibrium, even if it meant sacrificing my daughter's dignity on the altar of peace. 2 days later, the legal threat materialized. Not a lawsuit, but a formal letter from an attorney. It arrived by certified mail. My hands shook as I opened it. It was a demand letter. It stated that my voluntary provision of her insurance coverage had created a detrimental reliance, and my abrupt termination constituted financial abandonment of a dependent elder. It demanded I immediately reinstate coverage and pay a sum of $5,000 for emotional distress and associated costs, or they would pursue all available legal remedies, including a filial support claim. The language was cold, legalese wrapping around the core threat. It was real. She had hired a lawyer. This was no longer a bluff. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter spread before me. The $5,000 demand felt like a ransom. Pay to make the problem go away. Pay to be allowed to protect my child. I felt the walls closing in. The police, the social media, the family pressure, and now a lawyer. She was throwing every tool she had at me. I called my lawyer back and read her the letter. She was quiet for a moment. "It's aggressive, but it's still a pressure tactic," she said. "Filing a filial support case is time-consuming and expensive for her. The letter is meant to scare you into folding before she has to actually do it. My recommendation is to respond, through me, denying the claims and reiterating your position. It shows you're not intimidated and you're prepared to fight. That often makes the other side reconsider." "How much will that cost?" I asked, my voice small. The $250 consultation had been one thing. A legal back and forth could drain my savings. "A few thousand to start," she said gently. "Litigation is a marathon, not a sprint. You need to decide what this principle is worth to you." A few $1,000s. Money I had saved for Lily's future, for a family vacation, for emergencies. Now it would be spent on legal fees to defend my right to say no to my mother. The injustice of it was a physical ache. I was being financially bled for establishing a boundary. I authorized the response. The principle, my daughter's worth, was everything. While the lawyers began their slow, expensive dance, the human cost spiked. Lily came home from school the next day, her eyes red-rimmed. She threw her backpack on the floor. "Grandma called the school," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and humiliation. My blood ran cold. "What?" "The office pulled me out of class, said there was a concerned grandparent on the phone asking about my well-being, asking if I seemed distressed or influenced at home. They didn't tell her anything, obviously, but why would she do that?" Lily's face crumpled. "She's checking up on me like I'm a problem. She told them she was worried about me." This was a new low. She was no longer just attacking me. She was trying to pathologize Lily, to insert doubt into her school, to imply my parenting was causing harm. It was a sinister move, designed to make Lily feel watched, unstable, and to potentially trigger a child services inquiry. The warfare had entered my daughter's sanctuary. I held Lily as she cried, a slow-burning rage solidifying into something diamond-hard inside me. Any lingering filament of guilt evaporated. This was no longer about Christmas. This was about my mother trying to undermine my child's sense of safety in the world. I called the school principal and explained the situation in blunt terms. A grandparent engaged in a malicious family dispute, attempting to use the school as a tool for harassment. The principal was appalled and assured me they would flag the number and not engage. But the violation had occurred. The message had been received. That night, as I lay awake, the wait it gets worse moment arrived. It wasn't another call or letter. It was a memory triggered by the school incident. Years ago, when I was in high school, my mother had done something similar. A friend of mine had colored her hair purple. My mother, disapproving, had called that friend's mother, suggesting the dye was a sign of rebellion and that they should keep an eye on us. She positioned herself as the concerned moral authority. That friend's mother had been so offended we drifted apart. I'd forgotten. This was her pattern. When she couldn't control a situation directly, she went around it. She recruited allies, invoked authorities, planted seeds of doubt. She was doing to Lily exactly what she'd done to me. The playbook was the same, only the target had changed. This realization was the pivot. This wasn't a singular conflict about Lily's identity. It was the latest battle in a lifelong war for control. I had just never had anything she wanted badly enough to fight this dirty for. My compliance had always been cheap. Lily's conformity, however, was a prize she was willing to burn everything down to win or punish us for not surrendering. The following weekend, the doorbell rang. It was my Aunt Deborah again, but this time she was on my doorstep looking strained. "I'm not here to mediate," she said quickly, holding up a hand. "I'm here to give you information, because what's happening is wrong." She stepped inside and told me what was happening in the family group chats I'd been removed from. My mother was now claiming the stress had caused a minor cardiac event. She was telling everyone she'd had to go to the emergency room because of the insurance lapse, that I had literally made her sick. She was using it as the ultimate proof of my villainy. "Did she go to the ER?" I asked, my voice hollow. Aunt Deborah shrugged. "Who knows? She says she did. She has no paperwork to show. But that's not the point. The point is she's telling the story, and people believe it. Your uncle is talking about organizing an intervention for you. They think you're having a mental break." The narrative was now complete in their eyes. I was an unstable daughter, financially abusing my sick, elderly mother, and alienating my own child in the process. I was the family monster. I thanked Aunt Deborah, my mind reeling. As she turned to leave, she paused. "She's not going to stop," she said softly. "You need to understand that. In her mind, she's saving Lily from a wrong path and saving the family from your rebellion. She sees herself as righteous. You can't reason with a crusade." After she left, I knew what I had to do. The lines had been drawn in cement. There was no bridge back. The only path was forward, and it led through a scorched earth of my own making. I went to my computer. I opened a new document. I didn't start a legal response. I started writing a different kind of letter, one that wasn't for a lawyer or a judge. It was for me. It was a declaration of independence, a severance of ties. I outlined every instance from my childhood to the call to Lily's school. I named the pattern. I stated in clear, unemotional terms that the relationship was terminally broken. I wasn't going to send it to her. She wouldn't read it. I was writing it to make it real for myself, to cross my own Rubicon. As I typed the final sentence, my phone buzzed with a new email notification. It was from my mother's lawyer. The subject line, "Offer of resolution." My heart stuttered. Was this surrender, a truce? I opened it with trembling hands. It was not a surrender. It was an ultimatum. The lawyer stated that, to avoid the pain and expense of litigation, his client was willing to forgive the debt of the $5,000 and drop the filial support claim if I agreed to two conditions. 1. Immediately reinstate the insurance coverage. 2. Enroll my daughter in what they called a supportive youth program to address her social development. The blood drained from my face. They weren't just demanding a return to the status quo. They were demanding I hand over my daughter for correction. They wanted me to pay for the privilege of having her fixed. This was the final, unforgivable line. They had moved from rejecting Lily to proposing her rehabilitation. The letter wasn't a peace offering. It was a demand for capitulation and conversion. I closed the email. I looked at the document I'd been writing, my personal declaration of war. It was no longer enough. The game had changed, again, and I was done playing by any rules but my own. I stared at the lawyer's email, the words "supportive youth program" burning a hole in my screen. In that moment, something broke. Not my resolve, but the last fragile hope that this was a misunderstanding that could be fixed. This was a mandate. They wanted me to pay for the privilege of having my daughter corrected. The war was no longer about inclusion. It was about eradication. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I felt a profound, chilling calm. The time for negotiation was over. The time for defense was over. It was time for a final, definitive action. I called my lawyer back. "The settlement offer is rejected," I told her, my voice devoid of emotion. "And I am instructing you to send a new communication. Tell them that any further contact regarding my daughter's upbringing, social life, or education will be considered harassment and reported to the appropriate authorities. Tell them that all future communication must go through you and that it will be billed at your hourly rate. And finally, state that I am formally severing all financial ties and consider the relationship terminated." There was a pause on the line. "Are you sure?" my lawyer asked. "This is a point of no return. It will escalate things further." "They've already escalated to the point of demanding I change my child," I said. "There is no further to go. Send it." The letter went out. It was my declaration of independence, not as a daughter, but as a sovereign state. I was establishing borders. The response was swift and predictable. My mother, through her lawyer, accused me of abandonment and emotional cruelty. My brother sent one final text. "You've destroyed this family. I hope you're happy." Then silence. The 41 missed calls had been the last desperate volley. Now a Cold War had begun. But a strange thing happened in the silence. The pressure lifted. The constant dread of the next call, the next threat, the next piece of mail evaporated. The space it left behind was filled with a quiet I hadn't known in years. It wasn't peaceful, not at first. It was the silence of a battlefield after the fighting stops, littered with wreckage. Lily felt it too. A week after the final letters were exchanged, she said, "It's weird not waiting for the next bad thing." I asked her if she was sad. She thought about it. "I'm sad I don't have a grandma who likes me," she said. "But I'm not sad about the quiet. The fighting was worse." Her clarity was a gift. She was mourning the grandmother she should have had, not the one she did. I was still mourning the mother I'd always hoped for, the one who lived only in the gaps between disappointments. The practical matters unfolded slowly. My mother, faced with the reality of no insurance, did what I'd said she could do all along. She navigated Medicare. She found a supplemental plan she could afford on her own. It wasn't as comprehensive, but it covered her medication. The crisis she had prophesied did not come to pass. She was fine. That was perhaps the most quietly devastating revelation of all. She hadn't needed my sacrifice. She had needed my obedience. The legal threat dissolved. Without the leverage of my compliance, a filial support case was a long, expensive shot for her lawyer. They let it go. The police never returned. The school put a permanent block on her number. The social media campaign, however, left scars. Extended family members, armed with her victim narrative, quietly unfriended or blocked me. Holiday cards stopped coming. I was excommunicated. It hurt, a dull ache of isolation. But it also clarified who was in my corner. A few, like Aunt Deborah, maintained a careful, distant contact. "I don't agree with how you did it," she told me once, "but I understand why you had to do something." Months passed. Seasons changed. Lily thrived. She found a community of friends at school who celebrated her for exactly who she was. She joined an art club. Her confidence, which had been subtly dimmed by my mother's disapproval, bloomed. Watching her, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I had chosen correctly. Every lost family connection was a price paid for her right to breathe freely. Then, nearly a year to the day after the Christmas exclusion email, I received a package. No return address, but the postmark was from my hometown. My heart hammered as I opened it, fearing some new legal document, some final grenade. Inside was not a weapon. It was a photograph. An old, faded picture of me as a child, maybe 7 years old, sitting alone on the porch steps while a family barbecue buzzed in the background. I was looking at the camera with a quiet, observant expression that was too old for my face. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, was written, "You were always so independent." There was no note, no apology, just this artifact, this piece of evidence from the past. It was not a peace offering. It was a statement. In her mind, she was sending me proof of her original point. "See, you were always this way. You never needed me." This was her version of the story, her justification. But I saw something else in the photo. I saw a little girl who had learned, very early, that no one was coming to sit with her. I saw the origin story of the practical daughter. She wasn't sending me an explanation. She was sending me my own ghost. I didn't frame it. I didn't throw it away. I put it in a drawer, a fossil from a closed excavation site. It was the final, surprising detail. Even in silence, she was still trying to tell her side of the story. Life moved on, simpler, smaller, and infinitely more authentic. The family events I'd once dreaded managing now simply didn't exist for me. Lily and I started our own traditions. A Christmas morning in pajamas, making a ridiculous breakfast. A Thanksgiving volunteering at a community dinner. Our family was tiny, but it was built on a foundation of mutual acceptance, not conditional tolerance. The financial burden I'd carried was gone. The $7,000 a year stayed in my account. I used some of it to start a college fund for Lily, a concrete investment in the future she chose, not one someone else dictated for her. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I'd just let the Christmas exclusion slide. If I'd swallowed the hurt one more time, paid the premium one more year. We would have had a tense, awkward holiday. Lily would have felt like a guest who'd overstayed. The comments would have continued. The slow erosion of her spirit would have persisted, and I would have continued to fund my own demotion. The 41 missed calls were not a plea for reconciliation. They were the sound of a system crashing. They were the alarm bells of a dynasty that had lost its unpaid administrator. My mother wasn't calling to understand. She was calling to restore order. I never answered those calls, but I finally heard what they were saying. They were saying the only language she would ever understand was the language of consequence. They were saying that sometimes, protecting someone you love means becoming the villain in someone else's story. So if you are holding a similar lever, whether it's financial, logistical, or emotional, and you're afraid to pull it because of the explosion it might cause, ask yourself this. Is the peace you're keeping worth the price your child, or your own soul, is paying to maintain it? I learned that love isn't just what you're willing to give. It's also what you're willing to lose. I lost a mother, but I gave my daughter a world where she is loved, not in spite of who she is, but because of it. And that is a trade I will make every single time. The story that began with an exclusion and 41 missed calls doesn't end with a reunion or a dramatic forgiveness scene. It ends with a quiet kitchen, a daughter painting in the next room, and the profound understanding that some bridges, once burned, illuminate the landscape better than they ever did when they were standing. This is the uncomfortable math of self-preservation. We are taught that family is forever, that blood is thicker than water. But we are rarely taught what to do when that blood becomes a toxin, when forever feels like a life sentence. The lever I pulled, canceling a health insurance plan, wasn't just a financial decision. It was a geographical one. I moved my loyalty from the family I was born into to the family I was building. I redrew the map so that my daughter would never have to navigate a world where her home was considered a conditional visa. If you are the practical child, the reliable one, the one who has been trained to accept less because you don't need as much, hear this. Your need for respect is not a need for drama. Your desire for equity is not greed. The role they gave you was designed for their comfort, not your fulfillment. And you are allowed to resign from that position, even if, especially if, it leaves them scrambling to find another unpaid manager for their chaos. The 41 calls were a storm, but after the storm passed, I saw clearly for the first time. I saw that the cost of my mother's approval was my daughter's authenticity, and that was a price I could no longer afford, not even in installments. This story isn't a blueprint for revenge. It's a case study in cost. What is the true cost of keeping the peace? Often, it's the war within yourself. What is the cost of walking away? It's the grief of what you hoped could be, mixed with the relief of what will no longer be. So I leave you with this question, the one that finally pushed me to click that button. What are you funding with your silence? What system of hurt or exclusion are you paying for with your money, your time, or your compromised heart because you've been told it's the price of belonging? Your belonging should not require a down payment on your dignity. Your love should not be a loan with punishing interest. Thank you for listening to this story. If it resonated with you, if you've ever stood at a similar crossroads between someone else's comfort and your own truth, share your thoughts below. And if you want more stories that explore the difficult, real-world choices we make to protect the people we love, hit subscribe. Your support helps us keep telling them. Remember, the most powerful family you'll ever build is the one that chooses you back.